nationalist, and she has a keen interest in human rights issues in Colombia. Ms. Stevens is not a boxer, as far as I know, but supports Glamorgan at cricket and Cardiff City at football, even though she was born in Swansea. Is that allowed? Deputy Leader of Plaid Cymru, Delyth Jewell, is here. She represents South Wales East in the Senate. Ms. Jewell has worked on laws against stalking and domestic violence and has written articles highlighting the abuse and harassment of female politicians. Delyth is an Oxford graduate who chaired the university's Welsh Language Society and has recently argued in her column for the Caerphilly Observer that integrity in politics is vitally important. Rain Newton-Smith is Chief Executive of the CBI. Before taking on that role, was a Managing Director at Barclays. Rain, like Delyth, is also an Oxford graduate, spent 9 years at the Bank of England and was once the lead expert on China at the Oxford Economics Consultancy. Her bio on X describes her as passionate about climate action and the mother of 4 inquiring minds, by which she means her daughters. Yet another Oxford graduate makes up the 5th member of our panel. Journalist Vito Harry's bio on X describes him as a storyteller, by which he means his written and broadcasting work, not his time as the former Director of Communications at Number 10, when he worked for Boris Johnson, resigning on the same day as the former Prime Minister did. Vito
Irish politics reform.
How well do you think reform will do, David T.C. Davis?
Well, look, reform have a message that does resonate on the doorsteps.
Are you finding that?
Yes, I mean, to be quite honest with you, I am finding it. I don't think it's simply amongst Conservative voters. I think there are a lot of people out there who feel a bit let down for various reasons and also feel that mainstream parties are not addressing their concerns about things like immigration and, if you like, wokeness, if I may use that term. It's quite a wide-ranging one. There are a lot of people out there and they are tempted by reform. What I would say is that we offer a proper, coherent set of policies that will deal with the concerns most people have, whether it's illegal immigration, whether it's making sure that women have safe single-sex spaces, because Dennis has talked about the abuse women stuff, and I completely agree with that, but I think it's wrong that people who are physically male can take part in contact talks against women. I think it's wrong that people who are physically male can find themselves being put into women's prisons or into women's changing rooms or women's hospital wards by self-ID and saying that they're female. So I think there are a lot of policies that we have that we've been quite firm on and outspoken on. We should appeal to those people who are currently tempted by reform, and I hope they will come back to us in the last few days before the election.
Suella Braverman, your colleague, has talked about welcoming Nigel Farage into the Conservative Party. Is that what you would do?
Well, I'd welcome Jo to the Conservative Party if she signed up to Conservative policies.
Would you welcome Nigel Farage?
I'd welcome anyone who signed up to Conservative policies, but the Conservative Party is not. The Conservative Party is not a one-man band. I'm not saying that anyone else is. The Conservative Party is a team of people, and we work as a team. So I would welcome anyone who wants to work as part of that team and is signed up to Conservative policies.
Just to remind you of the question, what odds would you give the Conservatives winning the election? And given those odds, would you have a flutter? Rain Newton.
I wouldn't take a bet on the election. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to do so. But what I would take a bet on is on Wales and on the UK more broadly. And the business leaders that I speak to want to hear whoever is successful, whoever gets the keys to number 10, set out a positive vision for the UK economy, and that we have the economy front and centre of the debate. If we want to tackle the challenges our society faces, from climate change, from how we fund our public services, we need to be positive and we need to get investment going in this country. And that is about backing our businesses, that is about investing in our young people and investing in innovation, our universities, our creative industries. We have so much capability in this country, and we need to be setting out a long-term plan for how we drive sustainable growth in this country.
And we do have a question on growth. So we will come back to that. Thank you for your question, Ken. Let's take our second question. And it's from Anita Clements. Hi, Anita.
Is the NHS in Wales badly run by Labour, or is it underfunded by Muslims?
Lilith Jewell.
Thanks for
Anita.
well, the funding that we receive in Wales is not adequate, and that's why one of Prime Minister's main election pledges is to reform the way in which Wales gets its funding. So that is definitely a problem. But Labour does have to have some of the blame because they have been in charge of the NHS for 40 century. There has been some disingenuousness, I think, in some of how the Labour Party has been campaigning in Wales of modernising the NHS when they have been in control of it. Again, there are problems with funding. I do absolutely agree with that. But one of the main concerns that constituents write to me about in terms of delays with ambulances, delays with treatment, delays when people get to A&E, the over-centralisation of hospital services,
Boris Johnson was that the way of avoid the next cost of living crisis is to actually invest in it now. And had we invested a decade in more green energy, which was frankly the coalition government, and before that nuclear energy, which was done by a Labour government, we would not have suffered remotely as badly as we did. So I have an aversion to spending more and more money on benefits and fuel subsidies in the present, rather than using precious taxpayer money to try and make sure that tomorrow is better than today. And what I regret is that a lot of the ambitious plans, HS2 cut back, those nuclear power plants cut back, a whole lot of net zero ambitions that had big investment implications cut back. I'm afraid by the Conservative government, not great, but a Labour government is not offering to restore or match that.
And the question,
So we are going to an election with less ambition
Question,
on both
if I may.
sides than anyone had.
is this is one growth and stability. Whose manifesto will deliver this?
Well, sadly,
Let's talk about stability.
well, growth, sadly, neither is ambitious enough for me.
Or
Stability,
stability, 3 prime ministers for 2 months.
indeed, but stability could say that changing from, changing party is not stability. And changing party at this stage is not stability. Nobody thinks that, okay, I'll be honest, the parliamentary Conservative Party has shown a delinquent, insatiable appetite for self-harm over the last 5 years. And it has been one year after. And on that basis, it's an act of self-harm. But when you look at the choice of this election, we are looking at a young, clean-living, hard-working, super clever guy who understands economics and global finance and artificial intelligence better than almost anyone else that I sat down for breakfast with. And Rishi Sunak has a plan to take us to the next, to the end of the decade with seizing the opportunities that are there. And I'm not sure that a change to a 62-year-old human rights barrister is an improvement on that.
Josie.
We'll see gets up. I mean, I'm really delighted that Labour said what she has about the manifesto, part of the Labour manifesto, because when we launched it yesterday, what we are putting forward to the country is change to bring about stability, economic stability, which we haven't had for so long, to grow the economy and for wealth creation. So we want to create wealth from every community, for every community across the country. And we've got some really ambitious plans. So things like our industrial strategy, our skills strategy, our national wealth fund. We're going to set up GB Energy and invest in renewable energy. Why shouldn't Wales be at the forefront of that? We can be building floating offshore wind, bringing down bills, making the country energy secure, and stopping tyrants like Putin ever being able to hold us to ransom again. So there are no other parties with ambitious manifestos like this. It's been welcomed by businesses. We've developed it in conjunction with businesses and trade unions. And as an integral part of that is our New Deal for working people, so that people will have decent work, fair work, secure work, and everybody shares in the prosperity that brings.
What if the growth doesn't come?
We think the growth will come, and there's no reason why it shouldn't. The last Labour government,
Sorry, and what if it doesn't?
we think it will. We don't need to be thinking about it doesn't happen. We are confident that we can grow the economy in our plans.
What if it doesn't?
Well, I'm not countenancing that situation because we think it will. And the last Labour government grew the economy by an average of 2.5% a year, which will bring
Economic
tens of millions of pounds investment into our public services. We think we can do it.
I think if I could just, as the economist at heart, I think I can set out some of our view on what will happen in the economy at the moment. And actually, it has been really tough for people the last couple of years. We've been in the crossroads of a cost of living crisis because of high inflation. But actually, this year we should see growth in the UK economy at 1%, rising to around 2% next year. But I think what we want to see from all parties is the policies they will be putting in place now are what will deliver growth in the future. It has to be a long-term plan. And what we need to see is an ambitious plan that will help to drive growth at 2% and beyond into the future. And that's what we really need to see. And that is, as we've set out, around investing in people, investing in innovation, and investing in our long-term.
TC Davis.
Well, the last lady actually oversaw the complete collapse of the economy. I know that there were problems around the world.
Liz Truss also do that.
It was made a lot worse. Well, first of all, Labour's crash was made a lot worse by the fact that they spent all of the money. Liz Truss was unfortunate enough to have a rather disastrous month during which she
That'll be the Liz Truss that you wanted to be Prime Minister, and you certainly haven't.
and she decided to
Caused the crash.
campaign. But anyway, anyone who wants to whip out their phones now and challenge you all and have a look where inflation peaked was October 2022, and inflation peaked, across the whole of the EU. And that's slightly higher rate than it did in the UK. And the reason for that was that we had spent in the UK £400 billion supporting people with furlough schemes through the COVID pandemic, rolling out the first vaccine scheme in the world, and then paying half of everyone's fuel bills through the winter of 22 and prior to that because of the impact of the Russian war in Ukraine. So that's the first thing. It's been a very, very difficult 5 years. I mean, I must admit, I've been a minister throughout. I'll share some of the responsibility. I've never known 5 years. I've never known 5 years like it. Now where are we? We have actually historically low levels of unemployment, around 3%. Inflation has come down in the UK to around just over 2%. And we have the joint fastest growth in the G7 along with Canada. And all of that is going to put at risk if people vote for a Labour government, which, for example, wants to shut down the oil and gas industry in the UK so that it will throw out 1,000 people out of work and add to our energy bills. We've already seen what they've done on business rates in Wales, where they failed to pass on the business rate discount, forcing businesses to have to make costs and throw people out of work in Wales because they can barely meet their rate bills. We know that there are £8.5 million of commitments in there, which can only be paid for through taxation. And Joe can't answer the question, what if there's no growth? That is going to hit all of us either through borrowing
It's
or
already
through
it's
taxation.
government hasn't grown the economy whatsoever. You take the
Economy is growing. Economy is growing.
It's flatlining.
It's not just a joint fastest growth in Canada.
There was zero growth in April.
Yes, but I mean, obviously, you can't take one month. Over the last quarter, joint fastest growth.
And you don't count one quarter either, to be fair. So you can't have it both ways.
So what are we going to count? What are we going to count? Because we are now getting growth back into the economy at last. I mean, we've had a very difficult 5 years.
It's always someone else's fault, isn't it, David? Inflation going up wasn't your fault, but inflation coming down, you're taking the credit. It's always somebody else's fault.
I can take the blame for one and the credit for the other, or
You
not.
take the blame for that disastrous mini budget from Liz Truss that you supported. You wanted her to be Prime Minister. You served in
Help me out there. Going up right throughout the whole of 2022. Across the whole of Europe.
I think what we do know is, I think it's important to set out growth last year was flat in the UK. We did see growth in the first quarter this year, and I think that is important. One of the things that's made it hard for households is household budgets in real terms were squeezed over the last 3 years. But actually, last year we started to see an increase in household incomes as inflation has come down. And I think going forward, inflation has come down and should continue to come down and be close to around 2% by the end of the year. What keeps inflation low is investing in productivity of our broader economy. That's what drives a high skilled, high wage economy.
any other party to crash the economy after what happened to these persons goes really beyond the pale. But Regine, thank you for your question. Growth and stability. Growth is important for an economy. Of course it is. Everyone wants our economy to flourish, but I think that talking about growth, as some of the parties are, without reference to investment, without reference in the context of that to tackling inequality, it can just be an empty word. Surely the reality of people's lives is so much more important than just what's on a spreadsheet. In terms of different parties' manifestos, I mean, like can we put forward ambitious plans for a Green New Deal, investing hugely in green jobs to make sure that our bills come down as well. But there is a Westminster consensus which concerns me about the £18 billion worth of public spending cuts that have just been baked in. Neither of the main parties for this election are willing to go against that. And I don't understand how we could be talking about getting growth for the sake of growth, but accepting that basically austerity is going to continue. But the second
But if you get great growth,
place.
You don't necessarily need austerity.
Again, this is all talking about if.
Sure.
And the reality of people's lives, growth doesn't always necessarily, if we look at what happened during the South Wales Valley and the coalfields, the growth that happened hugely from mining, from making rich people richer, miners never actually benefited from that. So we need to see who is benefiting from the wealth. But the second part of Stuart's question in terms of stability, very briefly, last night, Angela Baynard said, I think when writing so said on one of the debates that stability is change. That's some kind of Orwellian newspeak thing. I don't understand what's happened for people to say it's stability. I can help you out on issues and add that.
I'm going to move on actually, just because we want to get more of our audience's questions in if we can. Let's go to Kate Jones. Hello, Kate.
With a daughter in a UK school who's only there because her state schools are deciding the budget or resources to support her needs, how will they now support her if I to move her back into the state system this coming September?
Obviously, if Labour win, they say they would charge VAT on private school fees. Joe Stevens, how do you answer Kate Jones?
Well, I'm sorry that you had such difficulty, Kate. What we want to do is to ensure that every child across the country has the best education possible and the best opportunity for their life later on. And we think that it is unfair that private schools benefit from a tax loophole where they don't pay VAT. They are schools, but they are also businesses. And so we will close that loophole, and by doing that, the money will then be transferred to the state sector in order to invest in our schools in the state sector and to ensure that the 93% of children who go to our state education system can also have the best that is available.
So what should Kate Jones and her daughter do?
I would suggest that you look at state schools in the area and see what is suitable for your daughter.
Kate is shaking her head in disagreement.
I don't know how long ago it was that you made the choice that you did, but lots of schools change over the years, and I would suggest that perhaps have a look around your local schools.
Is that something that you would consider being forced to do?
No, I mean, she's 8 years old. She's in reception in the first lockdown, so she's very young. Just to say the government in the states she's a child who has potential, but in a room full of 30 other children, she's just sinking. We've moved her, so she's got small classes, and she has some kind of one-to-one help. We're very fortunate that we can do it, but we're not ready. Because we have to.
Well, I accept that the particular circumstances that you describe, it's a difficult choice to make, but our responsibility, if we form the next government, is to look after all of the children across the UK, and we feel that this is a fair way to invest in our education system for the 93% of children that are educated in the state sector.
David T.C. Davis, you're shaking your head in disagreement. I'm going to ask you for brief answers.
Yes,
So you can go back.
firstly, obviously, somebody's going to ask this. I didn't go to Eton. I'm sure everyone thinks I probably did, but actually I went to comprehensive here, and you've got my 3 children went to one in Monmouth. But I'm really worried about this because we have a large independent school in Monmouth. It's not my own constituency. Surely this is going to be put at risk. And what that is going to mean is, firstly, a lot of teachers could potentially lose their jobs. A lot of children who could be in there for all sorts of things. I know people in the armed forces who are away from home a lot, who put their children into that school. They're out serving their country, and they need their children in school because there's nobody to look after them. But also, what is the impact going to be on the state sector when suddenly large numbers of people suddenly have to leave their school because Labour have shut it down and are looking for places in the local comprehensives? That is the impact of what you're going to do. It's going to have an impact on every single parent and every single pupil in this country. And I don't trust an incoming Labour government, if there is one, to match the funding and put the extra funds into those state schools, because we've already seen in Wales that they have not passed the funding onto the schools, and we currently have the lowest educational standards in the whole of the United Kingdom. And that's not me saying it, it's the independent OECD from their PISA report, the lowest standards in the whole of the United Kingdom after 25 years of Labour government, and this policy will make things worse.
I should say as well, full list of candidates for the Monmouthshire seat on the BBC website. Brain Newton Smith.
Look, I have 4 daughters at my local state school, and I think as a parent it's always really difficult when you're facing choices as to what is right for your individual child. I think one of the reflections I would just add is, having worked with businesses, one of the things that I am really proud of is how we're seeing more of the both of the main parties talk about setting out policies to support childcare, and I don't think that was something we necessarily would have seen a few years ago. We've been campaigning on behalf of business for us to have more support for working parents, because that has been one of the pressures and one of the reasons why we're not seeing more people participating in the workforce. And I think the more support we can give to working parents to help with childcare costs is really important. And we've seen the Conservative Party has backed that measure, and also the Labour Party, and also talked about providing nursery places, particularly where there isn't as much provision as they should be, and that's something that business leaders have raised as a concern.
Ditto, Harry.
Seems though we're all state educated here, and I must say, starting point for me is that you have to improve the schools that 95% of the population go to. But I'm grateful to you for reminding us that private schools are not just there for posh toffs called Cameron to be sent off to eat. It's not the reality. There are people who choose to forsake foreign holidays, Sky Television, to pick one topic around them, or whatever else it is, to send their children to a school because they think that is the single most important thing they can give their child as a parent. And I think that we should respect those people. And those people, if they were not paying for state education as well, there might be an issue there. But you're paying for state education and not using it, and you're paying for private education on top.
Right.
So it seems a little vindictive to me, and I doubt that the economics are going to be that significant, because if it does genuinely shift people from one school to the other, there's going to be a crisis in the state system.
Stella, Julie, are you in support of Labour's policy?
I am in support of that policy. And Kate, I'm really sorry about the situation that's affected, particularly in terms of what you're saying about COVID. I know that has affected so many children in so many ways, so I really hope everything will be all right. The reason I support this policy, the reason I support this principle is, and why I think that the focus needs to be on putting extra investment, and that's key, investment into the state sector, is in Welsh, the word for school is the same word as ladder, ysgol. It's the same thing, and the idea of being able to improve, to be able to improve your situation through education. South Wales Valleys, again, mining communities, education was so important, and I think that those opportunities should be available to everyone. But I do appreciate that this is going to be very difficult, and that again, this is a one-size-fits-all in terms of just posh toss, as Skidward said. So I am very sorry about the situation.
If you want to have your say on any of the subjects we are talking about, on any questions, you can call Any Answers. Lines open Saturday at 12:30, and the number you need is 03700 100 444. Anita would love to hear from you. Let's take our next question. It's from Julie Lewis.
Where have honesty, truth and integrity gone in politics? And do you think politics has deteriorated?
Thank you, Julie. Professor Sir John Curtis, who needs no introduction, our elections guru, has produced some research this week which suggests that trust and confidence in the UK's politics and election system has never been worse. Former Director of Communications for Boris Johnson, Peter Harry.
I had a funny feeling that one was coming my way, but without delving into that, because believe me, I've spent enough of my life taking the hits for that one.
But that has contributed, has it not?
But what I think is becoming obvious is that no one man has a monopoly on a lack of integrity in politics. We can park Boris and come back to some of the other. David Lloyd George, for me, is the best Prime Minister we ever had. Absolute scandal. Absolute appalling man in so many ways, but he helped win a war, and he established the welfare state, and he spoke Welsh, and he was charismatic, and he had crazy hair. Any parallels there? But I happen to think that we've got to overlook some minor things. I have a problem with Keir Starmer having gone into an election telling us at the last election over and over again that Jeremy Corbyn would make a great Prime Minister, and now he blatantly says and rightly, they never believed that.
Okay.
Now that for me is a bigger problem, and it's a very big problem to be in Wales where somebody can lose a vote of confidence in the Senedd and then just go home and forget about it. Why is he still the First Minister of Wales?
Let's
Why is he
ask-
the First Minister who cannot command the confidence of a Labour-dominated Senedd? If
Joseph.
anything undermines trust in politics, surely that makes us almost banana republic-like here.
That's pretty rich, Gitter, coming from someone who worked for Boris Johnson when we all know
That's a cheap shot. That's the same shot over and over again.
And I'll tell you,
Boris Johnson is no longer in politics because some of his ministers turned against him and he left. Vaughan Gething has lost a formal vote of confidence in the Welsh
non-binding
Senedd
vote,
and he is
a
still
non-binding
in power
vote.
and nobody seems to care.
Okay, Joe
The
Stevens.
reason why Vaughan Gething is still there is because he hasn't broken any rules, and even the leader of
He's
the Welsh...
lost the vote of confidence.
You had your say, Gitter, let me have mine.
He's lost a vote of
The
confidence.
leader of the Welsh Conservatives has said on the floor of the Senedd that Vaughan Gething has broken no rules. Imagine if Vaughan Gething had placed a personal bet on a government decision, a government that he leads, or, for example, he'd overclaimed potentially on his expenses at the Senedd. People around this table would
You
be
actually
calling,
think
would
that a
be
vote,
calling
losing a vote of
for-
confidence does not matter.
It was a
What is the authority of the
non-binding
Welsh
vote.
Senedd
It was a
if it can
non-binding
be
vote.
ignored by the party of the day at their whim?
It's a non-binding vote, and the Conservative Party in the Senedd abandoned the normal protocol where if people are ill, if a Senedd member is ill, that you pair them with a member of the opposition.
Okay,
So
let me ask
when
you,
the
Joe
Welsh
Stevens, if I may,
Conservative-
Joe
when the
Stevens,
Welsh
if I may.
Conservative leader was ill,
Joe Stevens.
we paired him for 3 months.
Sure, if
the
I-
Tories wouldn't do that on this vote, and that was pure political gain.
Okay. In the recent Welsh Labour leadership campaign, Mr Gething accepted £200,000 from a company owned by somebody who had previously been convicted for environmental offences. He lost a vote of confidence in the Senedd. Why is he still there?
Because he broke no rules. He broke no rules, and it was a non-binding vote in the Senedd.
What about morally?
We have Conservative candidates standing this general election.
We're talking
who are
about Vaughan
benefiting
Gething.
from Frank Hester's £15 million donation to the Conservative Party. Frank Hester is a man who has said that Diane Abbott should be shot. Now, I'm not going to take any lectures from friends of the Conservative Party or from Conservative politicians about standards in government. We have a plan to clean up government. In our manifesto, we've got a plan to clean up politics
Okay.
and to serve the public, to put politics back in the service of the public.
David T.C. Davis.
The problem isn't Vaughan Gething was breaking the rules. He wasn't breaking the rules, and that is the problem. The problem is that Vaughan Gething was able to accept £200,000 from a man running a company, a man who'd been twice convicted of dumping waste all over the Gwent levels. And not only that, there's something else to be added to this. That very same company had received £400,000 in a loan from the Development Bank of Wales, the taxpayer-funded.
Okay, I'm going to pause you there, Mr. I'm going to pause you there. No, please, if I may. We're talking about trust in politics and politicians. Very briefly finish your point, then I'm going to bring in Delington.
The general point, let's leave that aside. The general point is that politicians from all parties have failed to live up to the standards which they should. And the first thing that all of us should do is acknowledge that there are people within our own parties who have failed to live up to these standards that we expect.
Why does it seem to be so hard for some politicians?
I mean, I'd be the first to accept it. There are a lot of people in the Conservative Party who fail to live up to the
Why?
standards. Well, I don't know, but it's the same in all other parties. But they have. I know one thing. The one thing we've got is we've got in Westminster a recall.
Thank you, Julie, for this excellent question. Certainly the Tories, in terms of parting everyone, that poisoned trust in politics and the dodgy donations that we've seen to parties in Westminster, particularly to the Tories, that has poisoned Westminster. It's something that I do not want to see replicated in our Senedd and in Welsh politics. So yeah, what's happened with Vaughan Gething has been really difficult, I think, for us in Welsh politics to see, because this is unprecedented for a leader of a government to lose a vote of confidence. and then to refuse to resign.
But can I remind you, Delajul, that last year, of course, Adam Price resigned as Plaid Cymru leader after a damning report found misogyny, harassment and bullying in your party.
Yes, certainly there have been problems which I think that we would concede in all different parties, but this is about the leader of a government losing a vote of confidence and refusing to resign. And if I could just say that very quickly, it is so dismaying to hear some politicians referring to this as this vote as a gimmick. Our democracy in Wales is not a gimmick.
Well, I think one of those surveys, in fact, the Edelman Barometer and Trust Survey, says that actually business leaders continue to be more than politicians. So I think whoever...
Well, the CBI's also had trust problems.
Absolutely, and I think this is what I really did want to say as well. And I think we actually have some really important people in the room of politicians who are hardworking. And I think one of the challenges is we all know that there are issues of integrity in public life. And I would say in my own role, I have had the privilege of working with both the Chancellor and with the Shadow Chancellor and discussing economic ideas and some of the ideas that businesses have put forward.
And you came in to change the
to change what we have gone through as an organisation and to lead us forward and to ensure that we were a really important place for women and men to feel that they could raise issues and felt safe to do so. And I think that's really important whether you're in public life or not. And the other thing I would say is politicians do have to put themselves in the full glare of media. They have to put their families in the firing line. And there are so many ones who are very hardworking and really do have public service at the heart of what they want to give the nation. And so I think we do have to respect those who are really hardworking and have those values at heart.
I'd just like to say, when I took over the Welsh office nearly 2 years ago, I did try and do two things. One was to scrap the ministerial car, replace it with an Oyster card, to ban any alcohol being drunk in the Wales office. If by any chance I'm not there in 3 weeks and Jeff Stevens is, I hope she'll continue to travel around on the tube and not allow booze to be drunk in a government building.
No, the answer briefly?
I'm happy to do that.
Okay, you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, all of you, for your contributions this evening. Thank you for your questions as well from our wonderful audience here. In 2 weeks' time, any questions will be in Fleetwood in Lancashire. Next week, the programme is in Beverley in East Yorkshire. That is all from us tonight in Newport. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Any questions came from Newport Cathedral in South Wales. The presenter was Victoria Derbyshire. The producer was Cornelius Sinclair. It was a BBC Audio Bristol production. In a moment, your chance to have your say on any answers. You can call the programme now on 03700 100 444.
On BBC Radio 4.
You're listening to PM. We've had the announcement of a July 4th general election. Good evening, welcome to The World Tonight.
Please welcome your Any Questions panel.
The latest election news and discussions, alongside added insight from Understand the UK Election
I imagine there was a real sort of weird camaraderie.
and the Today podcast.
What are they going to be doing? How are they going to be preparing for this? What are their tactics going to be?
Plus, join me, Andy Zaltzman, and my guests as we extract the humour from the hustings in the news quiz.
The 2024 general election. Complete coverage on BBC Radio 4.
And Radio 4's election coverage continues on Tuesday when we've got a special extended 90-minute edition of Woman's Hour. Nuala McGovern will be putting your questions to senior women from the main political parties in the Woman's Hour election debate. That's at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning. Back now to election matters today. It's time for Any Answers with Anita Ireland.
Richard, thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon. Welcome to Any Answers. So, I wonder what we're going to talk about. We're halfway through the general election campaign. That's right. Maybe halfway through, just over. So we can talk about all things election today. Whatever you want to say, get it off your chest now. Have you made your mind up already? Have you changed your mind according to what you have seen and what you have heard? Are you maybe just hovering and not quite committed to putting an X in a box just yet? Whatever your opinion, please give us a call, 03700 100 444. And this is what I'm really interested in. What do you think about honesty, truth and integrity in politics? Do you think it's there? Has it gone? Has politics deteriorated? Was it always like this? Are politicians simply a reflection of our society, of us? 03700 100 444. If you run a business, I'd love to hear from you, because this was the week that many parties, most parties, released their manifestos. So far, who has the best vision for driving forward growth for our economy? So many promises made have mentioned depending on growth. So who is best placed to deliver it? 03700 100 444. We can talk about the NHS. I'd really love to know what it's like where you live. Is it being badly run? Is it underfunded? And you've heard that from all of the politicians about what they will do with the NHS. Who is the hospitals, the services best? 03700 do you know, I know we've talked about this before, but some do want to talk about this again. So a hot topic on the break as well. VAT on private schools. Tell me, is it fair and right? Or is it going to change the way in which children are funded? I'd really like to hear from teachers on this in both sectors, both the state sector and the private sector. Because it has become a subject of such hot debate. How do you feel about how your job, the work that you do, is being discussed by politicians? 03700 100 444 is the number. You can text us on 84844 or tweet us using hashtag #BBC. What? It is schools that you most want to talk to me about this week again. So let's start with that. Nicola Phillips is our first caller. Calling from East Sussex. Hello. Hello. Are you surprised, first of all, that is the number one driving issue that is getting people to pick up their phones today?
Yeah, I am, considering the small amount of people who do have children in private education that will be affected. I think the state education sector has been ignored for so many years. I think it's a shame.
Is it going to be good, though, for the state sector? If a lot of people, as they are saying, I mean, anecdotally, certainly we don't have figures yet, say they can't afford this 20% hike, and then they will go to the state sector. Is that going to be good, bad, or ugly for the state sector?
I don't think it'll make a difference, to be perfectly honest. We're talking about a very small percentage of the population, and I honestly don't think it will overcrowd classes. Classes are already big. Schools are already catering for classes of 30 to 40 pupils. I can't see that many will choose not to pay the extra tax and send their children to state schools if that's the choices they've made.
And what about those who phoned up here a couple of weeks ago? So we had somebody on the programme as well saying, look, for whatever reason, the state sector isn't right for my child, because my child either has special needs, special talents, whatever it is, and I am just about managing as things are, and this will just tip us over the edge into a place where we just don't want to be.
I have great sympathy and empathy for those that have children with special needs, but I do think it's time that the state took responsibility to give a decent standard of education to the most vulnerable children.
Well, you've talked about figures, so let's just remind people what the figures are. 93% of children in the UK are educated in the state sector, and 7% go to the private sector. So what do we make of those figures? Nicola, thank you very much indeed for that. 03700 100 444. I made a plea to hear from teachers and head teachers, and